Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review. I'm Lou Rosenfeld, and I'm welcoming you, Aletheia DeLivre, to our podcast. I'm so happy to have you today. You're talking to us from Calgary.
That's right. Yep, close to the Banff, the Rockies.
I wish I was there right now. It's a gray, gloomy day in Brooklyn, but you're brightening it up for me. If you don't know Aletheia, she is a senior program manager for design engineering, collaboration, and strategy, which is quite a meaty kind of role at a meaty company, Microsoft, and is speaking at the 9th DesignOps Summit, which is taking place virtually September 10th and 11th. We're going to get a little preview of some of her thinking, might go into her talk, maybe not, we'll see. Because I don't really know, Aletheia, we got some really great questions we're going to get into in just a minute. But before we do, give us a little flavor of your arc. Where are you coming from? And how did you get to this point with such an interesting remit at Microsoft and that we might be hearing a little bit about at the conference?
Sure. Yeah, I have. I'll try to do the short version, I guess, of my nonlinear journey up until now. But I actually started off in abroad, so doing international research and relations. So I had joined the European Commission at the time when they were undergoing Brexit. And so I was actually in the field more of like diplomacy, international relations, and trying to drive organizational change management, but at the scale of countries and multilateral agreements. So that was, I think, like a first foray into big scale change management and what that looks like operationally on the ground. And then I had several, different detours, but eventually fell into service design and innovative thinking and consulting. Moved into the digital space, so ended up standing up one of the first design teams at the Government of Canada. And I think it was a very interesting role that straddles both design leadership, but also ops, because as you know, when you stand up anything from 0 to 1, you're also figuring out, what does the hiring process look like for designers to join government? What does agile even mean in a place like government or bureaucracy? How do you contribute to a design system, in a space like government? So a lot of those processes and workflows and new things being stood up there. And then eventually moved my way to formally specialize, I guess, in design operations, which I still feel is very fluid and an ever evolving field. But I think I had like many different experiences. So I joined an enterprise SaaS company in the human capital management space. I also did Zapier, which is an automation and AI, a leading scale up. And then most recently joined Microsoft. So very large scale. But again, very excited by the work that we're doing at ops, because I think we're at a very pivotal moment in time. And the work that I'm doing is exciting and unknown because there's no precedence, but I feel like I get to write my job description every day. But a lot of my work is revolving around reimagining what the future of building looks like for both designers, but also our partners. So we're very intimately connected to our engineers. So I'd say design and engineering. Of course, that's in my title. So very big emphasis there on that collaboration and that strategy. But I think the whole emphasis is really exploring and unpacking and reimagining how we build in the era of AI.
Well, that's something on our minds one way or another, whatever kind of flavor of design we're doing. And I know you're doing a lot of thinking about this pivot, this as Peter Merholz calls it, a phase shift.
Yeah.
For how AI and a number of other trends are going to impact design operations. And I guess we're still sort of in a mode of thinking of design operations as primarily a management task, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that continuing, or do we need to step back from that?
I think that there's an interesting element here where it was like the model of design up until, OpenAI released their uh, product into the world and kind of upended, things and showed people what was possible. I feel like there was a model of AI that I think people understood more or less. And as ops people, you kind of just like wrapped your head around that model, whether that's the double diamond or the triple diamond or whatever, is something that was kind of a known framework. And you were kind of managing that thing that you thought you understood or knew. But now, as that model gets blown up, it kind of poses the question, what are you managing now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this duality between what are you managing? You're also figuring out what does the new paradigm look like? And I think there's a kind of expectation too that they look to ops to manage workflows, but who do you, yeah, what does that look like when even the person you look to is still figuring it out? So I think there's a fair bit of learning and experimentation that is going to be accompanied with that management. I think the idea is, yes, like for sure, I think that's one of the functions is still to be able to wrangle and manage or herd, processes, workflows, orchestrate those. But I think at this point in time, there's a fair bit of reshaping and defining and guiding and experimenting and figuring out what that is.
So
So
yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. So workflows are being blown up because primarily because of tooling and inflected or infused
Mhm.
tooling in
Mhm.
particular, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so can you describe what that looks like? Like what does or do we have a sense of what tool or workflow is going to look like, or is it just totally like we're just kind of picking through the rubble right now and we don't even
Yeah,
know?
right. I don't think anybody has a very crystal clear, sharp idea, of what that end-to-end workflow looks like yet, but we definitely are seeing emergences of like what pieces of the current framework might shift, or
Mm-hmm.
might get accelerated, or um, how how the handoff might change, or so I think there's things like with AI you can now with through conversational UI you can
Mm-hmm.
literally prompt from a concept into a functional prototype, so what does that mean in terms of the design process or the output is like, does it mean you now have, instead of having a picture of the product, you now have an actual version of the product? And when you're working in the actual medium itself, what does that mean in terms of the clarity or the sharpness of the design decisions you're making, your awareness of the technical constraints, your ability to explore edge cases, the quality of the feedback you're getting because you're now getting feedback on a functional prototype instead of a static mock-up. So I think there's like a difference there in the acceleration and also the environment in which you're collaborating, because let's say you are building functional prototypes as a designer, does that mean you have the same source of truth as an engineer to start with, and you can co-create more easily? You can look at the same thing together. What does design developer pairing look like, in those instances? So I think those are just some small fractions or fragments of how it kind of like rewires collaboration, or uh, it changes the way that we get from idea to implementation and the type of quality of feedback that we're expecting designers or builders to get through building.
So I'm hearing three big, I don't know if I guess you'd call them factors or sort of areas around which these pivots are going to happen. One is quality. Two is time or cadence, the fact that this is
Mm-hmm.
all accelerating and that,
Mm-hmm.
like, we have certain expectations about the
Mm-hmm.
design process and how long it
Right.
takes and how much time you need not only to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
for you to experience it, to make changes. That's all speeding up. And then there's the dynamics of the relationship between design and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of people saying we're not going to need designers anymore, and I don't think well, I guess we'll find out. But there's also a lot of people saying we're not going to need
Right.
developers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the power dynamic between those roles as they, in some sense, find that the sand is sort of shifting beneath their relative feet. So let's dig into at least the first one there, quality.
Yeah.
What I mean, we don't know the answer yet, but what indications are you seeing that we're getting toward a new understanding of quality?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I think it has two facets actually with AI, which is that I think it gets us so using AI in the process of product development, I think gets us faster from idea to prototype. So there's a inherent level of quality. It's like a ratio, like quality to speed, right? So even if, let's say, if someone were to spend 100 hours designing the same thing, their quality might be better, but let's say you can do it in a second. So then quality is might not be great, but I think it's a ratio of like quality to speed and how fast do you need that idea to be validated? What's the time to market? What's the opportunity cost for shipping something, that yeah, that just needs to be a prototype, for example. So I think there's like quality time ratio. I think this is where humans still have an edge is like the refinement of the craft, which is why I think AI is great to get us from idea to prototype, at least today's AI. But we still see a lot of gaps in terms of, well, even the current LLMs or AI models, they can't always successfully ingest components from our design system. So sure, it's great for me to say, hey, like I want AI, like please, code me a calendar widget or whatever, but it's not going to look like the rest of it's not going to consistently look like the rest of my product design language. And it's not necessarily going to be cohesive across my product suite. So I think that's where there is still a gap, in terms of how do it's great to get you from the first mile or, first few miles. And that's something that's good enough for you to test and get great feedback on. And maybe that's all you need in that situation of like testing. Hey, I want to test this interaction flow. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I just need a functional prototype to be able to test this particular, like the navigation or the way that the user is flowing through this product or this mobile app. But then once you refine it into production level code, I think that's where there's still kind of the last mile gap. It's probably more than last mile, but there's still something missing in terms of the level of craft, the adherence to your principles and your design system, componentry and pattern reusage. So yeah, that's kind of I think the two elements there for quality.
Wow. You're really kind of opening up a lot of new directions or at least putting them into words in a way that I hadn't really given much thought to before. I wonder if that's true for many of our listeners. I really appreciate it. In fact, while we take a quick break, I'm going to let it sink in. Everyone, we're talking with Aletheia DeLivre of Microsoft, a speaker at the upcoming DesignOps Summit. And she's blowing our minds here. So we'll be right back after the break. You listen to the Rosenfeld Review. Guess what's coming up? The 9th DesignOps Summit, taking place virtually September 10th and 11th. If you are not just a DesignOps pro, but a research operations person, if you're interested in content operations, product operations, this 2-day conference has so much for you. It's centered on 8 meaty case studies about what people are doing in design operations, really the cutting edge stuff, best practices. But we're also going to have 2 fantastic panels and featured speakers, Doug Powell and Alni Figueroa. And of course, no Rosenfeld conference is complete without a bunch of really interesting workshops. Come check it out. We want you there. You're going to want to be there. The 2025 DesignOps Summit taking place virtually September 10th and 11th. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. Oh my goodness. This is like a really, really deep take on the future of design operations in ways that I wasn't expecting. Aletheia, you're going to be talking about some aspect of this at the DesignOps Summit September 9th. I'm sorry, September 10th and 11th. And it will be virtual, everyone. So this Alethea's talk is just yet another reason you're going to want to be at the summit. And, we're kind of digging into possible future framings for what it means to do design operations and moving away maybe from the concept of management to something else. And as you were talking, Alethea, the framing that emerges for me, and I don't know what you think about this, is architecture. Now, that may not be surprising given my background in information architecture, but I'm really thinking more at a systems architecture level. So when you're talking about things like, like creating prototypes using AI, I mean, call it vibe coding if you want, call it something else. But my understanding of it is that it gets you part of the way there. But then there's like these really meaty, complex things that you're not going to necessarily tell AI to do for you. Like, what's the software architecture here? You can't just put a prototype in and launch it. It's going to, a piece of software like that is probably going to break down pretty quickly because it has a poor software architecture. Or in the case of people management, I don't know that managing people was ever like, especially when it comes to like the dynamics between roles like development and design. I'm not sure you ever really could easily manage that. But I wonder if you reframe that as another kind of system that you as a design ops person might tweak or tune or point in a slightly different direction in order to make it better, make that relationship better. I wonder if that's another reason to frame things at a kind of a more systems architecture level. But I know you also have a service design background. Maybe that's really the right framing.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you bring in this notion of architecture to design ops because I think it has more there's something about it that claims ownership in the blueprint that needs to be designed, And I think we're exactly at that juncture where I mean, I was thinking of, Rachel Posman has this book, this really, really amazing book called The Design Conductors,
I'm a
which
big fan.
everybody out there should
And
read.
it's and John Calhoun
And
as well, her
right,
co-author.
yeah, that's right, John Calhoun. But it's so fascinating because I just, the title Design Conductors, it's like that we are conductors, right? We're conductors of the craft. We're orchestrating all the time. But sometimes I'm like, I'm thinking of like a train conductor, and it's like I'm conducting things that exist, right? Like it's like the train. If there's a track for the train, or the train, we know it's a train. But what if the train is now a aerial submarine, even though that's like an oxymoron? But it's like, what if it's like not, and there's no train track for that,
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this element of like, then are we both the conductors, but we're also now these architects? We are figuring out we have a real hand in shaping and designing the blueprint for what that new paradigm looks like. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting and great association or analogy.
It almost feels like we have to be nudgers, like sort of
Mm.
like encourage in
Mhm.
directions. Oh gosh, in a way, this makes me think of parenting. I mean, like the one of the models for parenting is you don't tell your kid what to do. You give especially when they're little, you give them options that you're comfortable with and
Mm.
give them the the idea that they're making the decision when ultimately you're giving them the potential directions that you're comfortable with.
Mm.
Um, and they don't know what's going on, and I almost wonder if we need to be nudging people in directions or systems in directions that
Mhm.
so that aerial submarine doesn't hit the reef. It goes in a good direction. It may not
Mhm.
even realize it's heading for the reef.
Mhm. Right. Right. And this is where I think it's interesting because it's like you first had to know, first have to know that there's a reef or that there's a
Mm.
danger, right? And this is where I feel like we're still as ops figuring out, just as much as I have designers telling me all the time they have AI anxiety. They're panicking when they open up LinkedIn, or they feel behind all the time, like I'm not experimenting with the latest vibe coding tool. I like and so there, we're carrying a lot of their, and we're observing, we're carrying, we're also living those anxieties, but we're also figuring out, well, okay, what does the new paradigm look like? Is there a reef? Is there like a car that's coming, or like another airplane that's gonna, collide? And I think that's where it is a bit uncomfortable, which is, it's interesting because it's like, you gave the analogy of, you give your children three options that you feel comfortable with, or a handful, and it's like, what if one of them, what if it's actually, it makes you uncomfortable, one of the options makes you inherently uncomfortable, but it's the way to go. It's like there's some inherent, I think, discomfort in, again, reimagining who we are, what our work is, what our craft is. And so it's there is some discomfort there, but I think probably as we wrap our heads around it, we yeah, I guess we learn to compartmentalize, or we learn to ingest, what those uncertainties or those doubts are. But I think there is an element of this evolution that does push us outside of our comfort zone.
Well, so I'll drop one more potential framing in. It's probably all we have time for. The idea of mapping seems really important. Now, the map can't necessarily be a big map, like, because everything is changing, but it's more of a map that might give you an indication of what the near future, the nearby space, time and space are the same thing, right? So what's coming, soon, in the near, like on the radar, that's not too far off, but, something that you're going to still need to be able to respond to. The concept of situational awareness. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of or the Wardley maps. Simon Wardley, who we've had as a guest on this podcast once, ways back, talks about the concept of mapping and understanding your situation, just getting a little further out than anyone else can see, so that you can encourage in the right direction, so that those three options you give the kid are ones that aren't, going to blow up, and none of them are going to be a whirling vortex of knives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know what you think of that as a potential.
Yeah, I think this is where there's a bit of, to me, it's like, I know, product makers and designers everywhere are having their existential crises, but for me, I feel this sense of urgency as an ops to be like, as much as they're melting down, like, it's like I feel inherently like I need to be three steps ahead because I need to de-risk like what's coming ahead for teams and orgs, so I think that's the thing of like, yes, if you can get ahead and if you can explore that universe and if you can understand what the risks are, then you can kind of like call home backwards and kind of say, hey, like, these are the options that might not be, great. It's like, I think there's, of course, I think so. I'm coming to this matter of like safety versus comfort, so I think it's like, it can still feel uncomfortable, but you need to make sure that it's a safe or viable pathway, but I think there is something to, yeah, to getting it. There's this responsibility, I think, as ops and conductors or architects to understand what the pathway looks like, and it kind of behooves us to be able to guide, our teams and our organizations, and help them get it right.
I love it because, whatever the framing is, and we've covered a bunch. I think one of the common things here is pathway, and being able to see that pathway, or at least map it out. And I like the way you put it, maybe 3 steps ahead, not 100 steps ahead. That's not going to work. Nobody can predict that, but you could at least see a little further out. You could at least have a better situational awareness, and do so in a way that's ethical. Like, I think that's another part of what you're saying. So I'm really excited. I can't wait for your talk at the DesignOps Summit. And the rest of you listening in, September 10th and 11th, virtual. This is just one of many fantastic talks that we're going to be getting into that are going to just blow your mind. Aletheia, I'd love to know, before we wrap up, if you brought a gift for our listeners today.
Yes, I have brought a gift. Gift of knowledge.
Best kind.
For those who who are hungry and thirsty for knowledge. I love this book. It's called The Worlds I See by Fei Li. And it just so happens that it's kind of a nice tie-in because it is a book, personal memoir actually, that is related to AI. So Fei Li, the author, she writes this personal memoir, and she's an AI scientist, very well respected, well known, I don't know if she has one or several PhDs, but and she had a very pivotal, or like a very successful career, and she had a pivotal role in the creation of ImageNet. So this was something that enabled a lot of breakthroughs in machine learning and computer vision specifically. And the memoir kind of details it interweaves her story as a professional AI research scientist with her story as a person of color coming from Asia and immigrating. And I think it's such a beautiful, it's just such a beautiful narrative of how this has influenced her advocacy of human-centered ethical AI. I think because the breadth of her experience, her scientific experience, her lived experience, just has just placed in her such a conviction that the power of and potential of AI is so high that it really behooves us as humanity to develop AI in a way that enhances human capabilities, that doesn't replace them, but enhances them. And she really stresses the importance of diversity and inclusion in both the development of the technology and in the field itself. So I think she addresses a lot of ethical challenges as well around AI and the social responsibilities of scientists and technology companies. So I think that's a very fascinating, as we are coming to this, this juncture. I mean, we've seen OpenAI, we've seen Anthropic, there's a lot of things that are emerging as technology becomes powerful. There's always questions around the ethicality of this as it scales, And so I think Sam Altman actually, he just had was it an interview, or he was kind of like in this, I forgot what they call it. It's like not an interrogation, but he was in front of the US, right? Like
He
government or
testified.
panel, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
testified. And they asked him, what are the things that keep you up at night, And so, yeah, he had a number of things that were related to what if it falls into the hands of a bad guy, or, what if AI is like, I can't stop myself, and then it takes, so there's like all these questions, right? Of like, how does it infringe upon our humanity and the world as we know it ethically? And so, yeah, it's very, very fascinating book,
Sounds
personal, also scientific, and yeah,
sounds
love
like
it.
an essential read. Thank you for that. And thank you for
Yeah.
being with us today on the Rosenfeld Review. Great to talk with you, Aletheia. Looking forward to your talk in September.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Lou, and looking forward to seeing folks at on September 10th to 11th at the DesignOps Summit.
All right, we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the latest Rosenfeld Review. Really appreciate it. Before you go, I want to remind you that there's something you're going to want to check out if you haven't already. It is called the Rosenverse. Wonder how we came up with that name. It is your hub for all things UX and product design. It's a subscription platform with both free and premium options that has been trained and built on all the goodness that we've been putting out at Rosenfeld Media for years and years. So, what does that mean? It's a couple of Rosenverse live sessions every week that you can attend. It is hundreds of those recordings and hundreds of recordings from all of our conferences going back 10 years. And you may know that we do 4 conferences a year. It's also got this great chat bot called the Rosenbot that's trained on all of that, plus our 65 and growing collection of the best books out there on user experience. It's all there. There's some great discounts as well on books and workshops. and our conference tickets. Check it all out. It's all there for you. It is waiting. It's there right now. And even if you have a free tier subscription, you're going to get incredible value from the Rosenverse and the Rosenbot. Go to rosenverse.rosenfeldmedia.com. Start it today.